We start from Guinea, where social tension has increased since the introduction of stringent measures to curb the spread of COVID-19. Amnesty International has documented human rights violations committed by security forces, and systematic repression and arbitrary arrests of activists have reportedly increased enormously in the West African country since March. At least 7 people have been killed during demonstrations against the multiplication of checkpoints to restrict free movement. The government is yet to respond to calls by NGOs for an independent inquiry into the circumstances of the death of these people and to have those responsible held accountable. On the line with us from Dakar to discuss this further is Fabien Offner. He took part in drafting this report by Amnesty International. Hello, Fabien. Thanks for joining us. In a report dated May 14th, Amnesty International accuses Guinean authorities of repression hidden under the pretext of fighting against COVID-19. Can you tell us a little bit more? Yes, what we have wanted to say about the situation in Guinea for several weeks and even for several months now is that once again, there are renewed acts of repression. There are arrests and detentions targeting members of the opposition FNDC party. And on the other hand, any voice critical of the government and its current process, they are also arrested. And in addition, regrettably, we are also witnessing the excessive use of force and possible unlawful killings. We have unfortunately become accustomed to this from Guinean law enforcement agencies. There have also been violent demonstrations against measures implemented to curb the spread of COVID-19, such as limiting freedom of movement. And it's resulted in deaths. So you've also strongly expressed concerns about prison conditions at the time during the fight of COVID-19. And you're asking the authorities to release human rights activists. Is that so? Yes, that's right, because this spate of arrests and detentions is taking place at a time when Guinea is one of the countries that is most affected on the continent by COVID-19. A government visit to the Conakry prison showed that out of the 132 inmates, nearly 50% were infected. We laud the government for being transparent on the matter, but we have to question the interest or health logic that lies in detaining more people who have no business being in prisons where the pandemic is active in the very first place. And on that point, we clearly call on the Guinean government to ensure that the health of prisoners is preserved and that the fight against the pandemic is waged not only in Guinea but in other cities. So you're talking about protection in prisons and ensuring that health is saved.
Well,
that's our recommendation in light of a pandemic. These are the recommendations by Amnesty International, but they are largely inspired by a call by the United Nations to simply release the sick, the elderly, and also to release human rights defenders. The United Nations made this recommendation, and it has been reiterated by African institutions such as the African Commission for Human and People's Rights. These recommendations are against the excessive use of force during demonstrations, and on that point, we want independent investigations to be opened, irrespective of who is guilty. Unfortunately, these are things that have been repeated for months. There are several calls for the opening of investigations, but we rarely see results. We rarely see convictions. So that is the real problem. There's impunity in Guinea which must be resolved. And at the same time, given the current wave of arrests made during the pandemic.
Eh bien, Fabien Hoffner, merci à vous.
Thank you, Fabien Hoffner, for speaking to us this morning. He's one of those who drafted the Amnesty International report. And now we look at other stories on the continent.